welcome. It's so good to see you again. And I'm just simply going to turn it to you because I know that you're going to open us in a good way, and you're then just going to take it wherever you want to go. And then we'll close at our usual time at around 1:45. We want to be mindful that this is sort of a lunch and learn, a chance for people just to get into the topic before our afternoon classes or whatever else, whatever other commitments we have. So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Lance. It's very good to see you too. I only wish that COVID didn't exist and we could be in the same room, because your warmth and your welcoming nature and your open mind and your open heart are always so much appreciated by me. I love our conversations, the fact that both of us, like, we could see it, or theory or an anecdotal something, and that is super valuable to me, because safe discussions and ethical space is a huge priority of mine. So I would like to start this class in a prayer written by one of our indigenous students at Calgary Catholic. Her name is Danica Stefanato, and she wrote this when she was in junior high at Our Lady of the Assumption, I think, is the junior high school in Bowness. And she was a junior high kid there, and she wrote this prayer, and she's wonderful. And I know her mom. I used to work with her mom, Cindy Stefanato. Lance, you probably know Cindy Stefanato as well. She was in my position before she went into school based in Mint. So if you will join me in prayer, I just have to click onto that screen. So in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear God, our Creator, thank you for giving me the opportunity to understand people who are different from me and have a different history than I have. Thank you for giving others who are different and have a different story the opportunity to understand me. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to learn about each other and learn from each other. This understanding and knowledge will grow and help us to love and take care of each other. Together, we will be better stewards of the earth, stronger advocates for the less fortunate, and will be better able to carry out your will. For this, I give you thanks. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So that is a prayer that I start all of our PD with. I think it's very valuable, and I enjoy it, and I love that it's student voice. That to me is very important. I could read you our new land acknowledgement that we are vetting past elders this week, if you would like that, or would you like to read the land acknowledgement? Your land acknowledgement.
Please go ahead. I think that's a really important piece to share, and maybe even helps us appreciate the process by how you include Indigenous and elder voices in the learning. So thank you.
Our last land acknowledgement, I don't even have it memorized because I don't use it. I try and do something more authentic because of the role that I'm in and the knowledge that I have. But it says something like, we would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. And it's quite a few years old. So it was a bit landmark when they first had it, and it was a good effort when they first made it. But what we kind of realized in the last few years is that it needed more oomph, more context, more authenticity. We fully acknowledge that there are people out there who think that land acknowledgements are actually taking away from awareness. And it's something that I have talked to academics about and our department, meaning that it becomes performative, much like tying your shoes. You don't have to think about it to do it, you just do it. Or I'm sure Catholic educators would argue that sometimes if you're not cognizant of the Lord's Prayer, you can just get into a place where you say it at the beginning of every day without thinking about it. We want to avoid that with our land acknowledgement. So we're working towards providing strategies for principals, because we need to start with leadership, then teachers, and it'll go to students that way. For contextualizing this and becoming aware of it and becoming purposeful with it. But the new land acknowledgement that we are running by elders right now. So the process being, Wanda First Rider is the elder for our school district. And we got together as a department, people who are like Métis, or we have a Cree member, an Inuit member, Wanda's Blackfoot, Deb's Cherokee, Tristan's Ojibwe. We got together as a diverse group of Indigenous people for Calgary Catholic under the advisement of Wanda and created this land acknowledgement. But in order to do things in the right way, we need to make sure that elders from each of the nations around our territory we have their blessing for this acknowledgement. There's a couple of different schools of thought. One is that we should have had the elders in order to create the acknowledgement. But we were under the advisement of an elder, Wanda Firstrider, and it's because of COVID. Normally we would have had the elders in, we would have had a meal and visiting and all the things and done it, but because of COVID we can't. So we got together as a department, we made this acknowledgement, and now Wanda and I are going to an elder from each of the nations mentioned to show them our land acknowledgement, get their perspective on it, and see if they have any suggestions for it. And at the same time, we're asking them questions like, what does it mean to you when you hear a land acknowledgement? How would you explain to someone who doesn't understand your tie to the land? If you wanted people to know something about, the Tsuut'ina people, what would you tell them? We're asking those kinds of questions, and we're videoing the elders so that we can create learning materials that go beyond this land acknowledgement. This is just a starting point with ideally these entry points in it. So without further ado, the new land acknowledgement that we have created is, and of course, we also looked at the diocesan one. Did you know there's a diocesan land acknowledgement?
Good learning.
Good learning. Did you also know there is a vicar of indigenous initiatives?
I was aware of Father Miles, correct?
Where is he at? That doesn't sound familiar.
No, he is down south.
Pincher Creek.
Pincher Creek, yep.
Okay, because that name doesn't sound familiar, but that is the place where this.
Who is it then? I could be mistaken on the name.
I can't remember, but Father Miles, it doesn't sound familiar. But I mean, it could be him. I mean, we had a meeting with the bishop in June, I think. Wanda and I and like our superintendent and I think our director met with the bishop to talk about land acknowledgements, because we had to explain that this land acknowledgement, the diocesan land acknowledgement, made by Treaty 6, or made in Treaty 6 territory, run by, or vetted by, or blessed by Wilton Littlechild, is that I'm so glad it was done. We're so glad elders were consulted, but the elders of this treaty area should also be consulted about the diocesan one as well. And he's not averse to that. It's just a process and everything's slower with COVID. So anyway, there are two land acknowledgements. The diocesan one is the one we will use for masses and things of that nature, like if we're gathering for our faith, but liturgies is the word I was looking for. And this is the one we will use for all other things. Sorry, I'll close my email so it doesn't do that to you again. The land acknowledgement is, and so what the reason I got off on that tangent is because we're trying to pull together elements of and a compromise between where we offend no one. Good luck, right? But so far so good. So here's our land acknowledgement, our new land acknowledgement, which you cannot share until I have it all vetted and minted. But it is. The Creator gifted us with this land that we are blessed to share and care for together. The Calgary Catholic School District acknowledges that the land we gather on, Mohkinstsis, is the ancestral territory of the Siksika Itsitapi, the Siksika, Gaena, Piikani, and Amskapi Piikani. We acknowledge all the Treaty 7 signatories, including the Tsuut'ina people, as well as the Eyahe Nakota nations, the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley. This land is also the home of Métis Nation Region 3 and all others who call this place home. And that is our new land acknowledgement that we are working on with the elders. And then we're creating like learning materials to go along with it, like a pronunciation chart and videos of the actual elders saying the names of the places and like little lessons about each of the places. we're just obviously in the infancy of this because we didn't even get permission until June. But it's a great process that I'm very hopeful about and that I'm very proud of, and that I am continually, I have to stress this, continually impressed by the importance and the recognition and the respect that the Indigenous Education Department in Calgary Catholic gets from our leadership. It is unlike any other school district I ever talked to. And it's actually getting better, I think, or it's even more so or more spoken aloud with our new chief superintendent who started in March, who's had us in to do a number of things. Whenever I talk to someone who has my job in any other district, they can't believe that we're a priority. We're one of 4 priorities for the district, like fully 1/4. We have dinners twice a year with every single trustee and Indigenous guests that we bring in from the community because they want to know what's happening in other places and with other people in Indigenous education. Yeah, we're just very well respected and we're very well regarded. And every time we point out that something is systemically off or racist or there's been an omission, and it's, as far as I've ever experienced, never been on purpose. It's just because it's the way it's always been done. So then I point out, well, how it could be done better. Within minutes, it's always changed to how it could be done better. So I can't stress that enough about our district and how we're treated in our district. So the thing I thought I could show you that you guys might be interested in and talk a little bit about our strategy and our team. Would that be something you're interested in? Like how we support teachers and how we support students in Indigenous ed? Is that something you would like? So I will share my screen. I don't know what I'm clicking here, but let me know if you can see my screen. Somebody say, hey, I see your screen.
Looking good.
I do see it, but it is a bit blurry.
Oh, and I clicked the like optimize for showing a video, so maybe that's wrong. I could like, I'll stop the share and then I'll share it again without clicking that button and see what it does. Come on, Julio, you're better than this. There we go. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Woo! We're winning. Technology hates me, so whenever I win with technology, it's a big day. So, serious, I used to get technology out in my classroom and my students would start laughing because they knew they had 15 minutes to do whatever they wanted while I tried to make it work. This is our team. So this is our new boss, Cynthia Lonier. She was most recently a principal of a French language school in our district, and she is of Indigenous ancestry as well. It's not why she got the job. She didn't even tell anyone she had Indigenous ancestry, but she was so pumped when she got the job because of that. She's wonderful. She's already immersing herself in the community. She's already advocating for levels that we as the consultants don't get to. On the right is Tristan, I always want to say, anyway, Gulliver. He's a family support worker, so he's a social worker, but he works. We have 2 family support workers. We're just in the middle of hiring one. We've hired one already. We have to get her all of her police checks and that kind of stuff in. Her name's Mary McDonald, but this is Tristan. We work under a different model. We have 2 family support workers who are Indigenous and work with Indigenous students and families and go into schools and work one-on-one. And go to families' homes and do whatever it needs to be done. And they work under a different model, meaning they don't just try and contact the family twice or 3 times and then go, well, the family doesn't want to talk to us. They'll contact them 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Then they'll call an elder from that nation to see if they'll bridge in to help us. Or they'll go in, like Tristan will go in and do like bone carving or medicine picking with those students one-on-one. Just to try and access them. I think he's taking his master's right now in art therapy as well. So we have that strategy. They submit a referral for support in there somewhere. They write Indigenous Ed team and or indigenous student, and then it comes to us at those meetings on every Friday morning. Underneath Tristan is Deb Todd. She is one of our our school liaisons, and she is Cherokee, and she's been in the district 20 years or so. She works at many of our high school locations with our students to ensure they stay on track for grad, to ensure their class loads are such that they will graduate, their class choices, communicate and liaison with families and community organizations and teachers. And she's sort of a go-between and a safe space for Indigenous students at the high schools that she works at. Sort of a different one, like each day kind of thing. Like she has 3 that she goes to every week. I think she's going to start going to like 5 of our schools, one day a week. Patricia McCallum is on the bottom on the left with the red necklace. She's Cree from the Waterhen Lake First Nation in Saskatchewan. She is my co-consultant. She's wonderful and funny and warm and very hardworking, and she works with diverse learners. So if a school has a question about a student or a family, it goes to Trish first. Then she sends it over to Tristan and or any other consultant who's needed and works with it. She also helps me doing PD, and she helps with the EPD site. We have an e-professional development site where with like videos and lesson plans and contacts and where you can get tobacco and like really everything that we can think of for teachers to have free access to at any time in our district. Me in the red pants. My hair has grown a little since COVID. My daughter was just pointing out the other day how dark the bottom of my hair is. I was like, thanks, kid. Thanks a lot. And then beside me is Wanda First Strider. She's the Nation, the Kainai, or the Bloods, you might have heard it called. She is our elder. She's also my na'a, which means mom in Blackfoot, because 2 or 3 years ago she adopted me in a traditional ceremony. So she's my mom as well, and she helps us and guides us with everything that we do. She bolsters us. She introduces us to community members we need to know. She is amazing, like amazing. And she's been in our district for 33 years, which is insane. Like I was still in junior high, I think, or maybe elementary when she started, which is crazy, and it's invaluable. And then on the right-hand side is Inuvialuit, my Inuvialuit colleague, which means Western Arctic Inuit, Ashley Rubin, and she is the district Indigenous content teacher. So if you're a teacher in a classroom and you want to do something about the Inuit for grade 2 social studies, or you want to do something about collective agreements for grade 9 social studies, and you're not exactly sure if the resource you have is correct, or you want her to come in and facilitate a lesson on treaties, or a blanket exercise, or a lesson on uses of the buffalo, or a lesson on, or help you indigenize something that the content is non-Indigenous, you're just going to indigenize the process. That's what she does. I guess I didn't say what I do, did I? I work mostly with leadership in the district, like principals and up on professional development, on community liaison work. So if I have a school that wants to go to a sweat, I will find them an elder who they can do a sweat with, and I will give them all the information they need to prepare for that and to show up in a good way and in the right way. If a school would like a storyteller to come in or someone to pitch the next district TP, I know a couple of facilitators who can do that. If they want someone to come in to their music classes or their dance classes, I know facilitators who do that. So if they want to have a large moose hide, like last year I facilitated a moose hide campaign day at St. Francis, and there were students from 10 different high schools. And I had 4 different speakers, and we went on like a march for justice after with a drummer and a singer. And it was like this awesome day right before COVID. So thank goodness we got to do that. February 24th was the day. We coincided it with the National Moose Hide Campaign Day. So that's basically what I do, is professional development for staff and up, and community events and community, like I help coordinate community facilitators. I also work on the EPD, and I also do a lot of professional development presentations, and I also go into classrooms. I'm the touchstone for Indigenous Studies 30. We have that now in 10 of our 13 high schools. And it's an awesome option for Indigenous and non-Indigenous students to take. There was something else I wanted to show you here. Oh, yeah. So another big part of my job recently has been helping teachers meaningfully access TQS5 or start their journey towards TQS5 without being afraid. Or, nah, I can't do that. You still have to be afraid. If you're not afraid, you're not respectful enough of what you're trying to do. But I want you to feel like you have someone there to hold your hand, someone there to ask questions of, send an email to as you go towards this journey. So like I've created a document called Meaningful, Manageable, Accessible Ways to Start Your Journey Towards TQS5, because you'll never finish TQS5. I won't finish TQS5. And it has things like just basic things like indigenize your news feed. Get your news sources from Indigenous people on your Twitter, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, on your wherever you're getting your news sources, needs to have some Indigenous news sources as well. Start listening to the Indigenous radio station in town. Yeah, it's got a lot of country music, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. But it also has like, Lance, I know you are a secret lover of classic country.
Judgment here.
But more importantly, during the commercials, they have like highlights of Indigenous entrepreneurs in the community. They have Indigenous upcoming events in the community. It's a way to stay, if you got a 15 or 20-minute commute, it's a way to stay connected a couple of times a week. What's going on in the Indigenous community? The other thing I like to always tell teachers is about like why we're doing this. We're not just doing it for the TQS5, we're also doing it because of the TRC calls to action, because of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I actually wrote a paper about that this summer for my master's program, about the various unenforceable policies that have been brought out, like UNDRIP and the TRC, and why are they not in law, right? And it basically comes down to the one that is law is the TQS5, which is a good thing that we have that in actual policy. It's an actual professional standard that teachers have to comply with. So yeah, a lot of what I do now is teaching teachers about the TQS5. And I always draw the attention to the image on the right. Like show it bigger. Oh, come on. Oh, I got the spinning wheel of death over here. Okay, there we go. The image on the right is a treaty medallion that every single signatory of Treaty 7, each treaty has one, this one's Treaty 7 as you can see, got. And I encourage teachers to use that and study the imagery there. It's not one of capitulation or conquering. It's two, albeit men, two equal, proud, strong, upright men shaking hands, because the treaties were a nation-to-nation agreement. And that's where I started with my paradigm shift years ago, is that no, it wasn't a conquering, it wasn't a capitulation, it wasn't a we'll give you this because we feel sorry for you. It was a nation-to-nation agreement to share the land in exchange for education or healthcare or whatever. And they just weren't honored. Like we talk about how the treaties, a lot of them left Ottawa written already on the train. So really how much negotiation was happening at those treaties. So we talk about the spirit and intent of the treaties as well when I educate about that. This is the other thing I would show you guys on the top right, not to talk about competition or anything, Lance, but that's not the top right, the top center. That's Dr. Dustin Louie, who's a prof at Workland at the U of C, the College of Education. And he drew my attention to Dr. Linda T.Y. Smith from Aotearoa, which is the land of the long cloud, which is New Zealand. She's a Maori scholar, and she wrote a book, the book on the left, Decolonizing Methodologies. And so I can send you this doc if you want. I just found it somewhere shortened into a Word doc where each of these is explained in like a paragraph if you don't have time to read the book. So these are her 25 indigenizing or decolonizing principles. And what Dr. Dustin Louis does with his students is he has them choose a grade level, a subject level, and an outcome, and then choose 2 of these to create a learning tool. So what we hear often is, I'm a math teacher, I can't indigenize that, or I have to teach Shakespeare, whatever it is. And so my new challenge to teachers in the last 18 months, because we're getting much better at bringing TPs in for structural unit in grade 7 science, or bringing mini mocks in, or bringing, whatever it is for each, we're getting good at bringing in obvious culture, which is great. That's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. So now let's look at indigenizing our process, how we do what we do. So an example I use, I literally wrote this slide, and then I flipped open my Twitter, and here's this thing. And I go, oh, hey, thanks, creator. This is a good one. It's like social studies, sort of kindergarten to grade 12 is mapping and naming and, colonizing and conquering and battles and history and whatever. So, I mean, this is applicable across sort of the spectrum of K to 12, but you could talk about, as it says in this last slide, you could talk about claiming, you could talk about storytelling, you could talk about remembering, you could talk about naming in number 20, sort of how places are named. And the joke I always make is that in the Eurocentric way, the place is named by somewhere we came from. So like Calgary is a place in Scotland, or the first white guy who peed here, and it's named after him. So that's the joke I always make, because that's true. Now, you don't have to present it as a bad thing either. That's just the way it's done. And, talk about that, analyze it, and then compare the two, redrawing the lines, and show Calgary Foundation's land acknowledgement, talk about how Mohkinstsis is named because it's the elbow where the 2 rivers meet in the shape of an elbow, and Mohkinstsis is the Blackfoot word for elbow. Talk about how the people here harvested the chokecherry branches to make the bow for their bow and arrow for their hunting, because it's so flexible and it doesn't break. Talk about, sort of the place names in here. Talk about Deerfoot. Talk about Sarcee, how the Sarcee were called the wrong name for over 100 years, because at the signing of the treaty, no one spoke Tsuut'ina. So the Tsuut'ina had to speak to the Blackfoot, who spoke to the interpreter, who spoke a little French, a little Michif, a little Blackfoot, a little English, who spoke to the British. And the Sarcee, or the Blackfoot word for the Tsuut'ina is Sase, which means, depending on the story you hear, bold, or like a good fighter, because when they got here, they had a battle for 3 days, I've been told. And at the end of the 3 days, the Blackfoot agreed to let the Tsuut'ina stay if they agreed to guard or take care of or watch over the west boundary of the Blackfoot territory. So, I mean, that's a story in itself. This is why we have Sarcee Trail and Sarcee Plaza. And when they're Dene, they came here 400 years ago from the Dene of the north, and they speak Tsuut'ina. So why do we have Sarcee Trail? That's a good story, though, right? Kids like stories in the end. Then they'll start to understand, wow, like at the signing of the treaty, did they even know what they were signing if they didn't even know their name? Do you know what I mean? And then the kids will start to draw their own connections. But these are the types of things that we talk about in PD to support teachers. These are the types of things that we do in classrooms. This is my classroom. So I teach Indigenous studies every summer because I miss the classroom so much. I love the classroom, and I have 3 kids and that I can't afford. So I also have to teach summer school. So I teach summer school, and this is my classroom, and it's honored. I blow it out into a circle. It's actually the art room at Father Lacombe. They give me the art room because it has a big garage door, and we can let nature in, and we smudge every single day. Calgary Catholic actually has an administrative protocol saying that we can smudge in any room in Calgary Catholic, as long as we've let the the janitorial staff know, the administration know, so that they don't call the cops and the fire department. And there's a window so that it can eventually, air out. So that's something that like the other Metro board doesn't have yet. So we're even getting into like the administrative policies. But there's Wanda teaching in my class with Paula, who's my co-teacher, Tim Fox on the second on the left talking about intergenerational trauma. We start like the first day talking about the value of the buffalo and the intended extinction of it to bring the indigenous people to their knees so that they would have to sign the treaties, like what kind of spirit and intent was happening there with those treaties. And it stays, and then the medicines, and we smudge every day, and it's always voluntary because you can't make anyone pray. Like we've talked about that. I might even quote a little Shakespeare. My words rise up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. That's me as a recovering English teacher. So you can't make a kid pray, and we don't. So generally when we start, I've taught it 3 summers in a row, about 1/3 of the kids try the smudge, and kind of by the end of the month, probably 90% of them are smudging, because we talk about syncretism between the 2 religions. We talk about the incense, carrying our prayers to heaven in the Catholic Church, and that it's somewhat the same with the smudge in our smudge pot, carrying the prayers to heaven, to Creator. We talk about how we return the ashes to the earth. You never put the ashes from your smudge in the garbage. You put it back in the earth, somewhere that it's not going to be disturbed. And so we sort of talk like about ashes to ashes and how we all return to the earth, and we're taking your prayers and your thoughts back to Mother Earth when we're done smudging. You can see like Wanda comes in generally and presents 2 or 3 times. This year I had to do it on Zoom, which felt kind of wrong because an oral experiential culture online is rough. But when you're thinking grand scheme, it's better for them to have it that way than to not have it at all, is sort of how I went. I had 11 guests from probably 8 or 9 different nations in my summer school class this summer, because there's a curriculum written 18 years ago by Alberta Ed, and Alberta Ed won't even let us change the name of it from Aboriginal Studies. So I have changed it locally to Indigenous Studies. But it's an 18-year-old curriculum, and it's fine. We teach it. But what I really want kids to know is about the richness and diversity of Indigenous people. And so that's why I have so many guests in talking about ribbon skirts, I think one on the next one. Ribbon skirts. Where's she? Oh, I don't know where she is. But she's here somewhere on one of my slides. She comes in, she's Ojibwe, she talks about ribbon skirts. Dr. Michael Lickers, who works for you guys sometimes, he came in and just did a Q&A and talked about like land disputes and stuff because he's Mohawk, so that's illogical. Dr. Dustin Louis came in and talked about the potlatch. Russ Baker came in and talked about medicine pouches and made one. So what we did was make big manila envelopes with all the materials kids would need to participate. And we went to the high schools and we waited, and the kids came and picked them up from our minivans and took them home so that at least they could participate and have hands-on while they were learning from some of our facilitators. Not all of them needed that. I'm trying to think. Tim came in and talked about intergenerational trauma. Fox and Harold Horsfall from the city came in and talked about traditional hunting and showed them like his new cutting edge bow and arrow that he uses when he hunts, and it was just really cool. It's a really cool experience. Also, I encourage people on the bottom here to look at Martin Broken Leg's Circle of Courage for all students, also troubled students, but all students can benefit from feeling belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. And I sort of compare it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is what a student needs in order to be a self-actualizing, feeling fully worthy and valued member of your classroom. Trying to think what else I've got here. Where's Cindy? There's Cindy. Yay! So Cindy's on the top left. These are other things that I do. So this is from Bullet C in my classroom in summer school. Where is this slideshow? Slide. So we play hand games with drumming, and we do like, this is Joe Starlight on the bottom. The district has a teepee. People can get in, and an elder will come and tell stories and set it up with your students and your staff, and take it down with your students and your staff, so it's hands-on learning. The other thing we always tell teachers that we need and we're supportive of is good resources. Please read, what's his name? Dr. Leroy Littlebear's Jagged Worldviews Colliding, if you haven't. You had him present at your institution last year. It's short, maybe 4 or 5 pages long, but it talks about how you need, like, Blackfoot ways of knowing are cyclical. In so many Eurocentric ways, it's like, I always think like Fontes Pinel, A, B, C, D. It's like, okay, I learned this, now I can go to this. But Dr. Littlebear talks about how we learn something, and then when we learn something new, we have to come back and revisit it. And I don't think most education students right now are old enough to, they're probably born in the 90s. Oh, maybe not even. Whew, I'm getting old, Lance. But when you think about the jokes that you used to be able to tell in society, like jokes about blondes, hey, what if a lot of those are jokes about people with different differences, all sorts of differences. They used to be, it was never okay to tell those jokes, but it used to be thought okay. Now that we know better, we revisit and do better, and we can realize that we can. And so if you read that about from Leroy Littlebear, it'll make sense to you. I also shared a video with Lance that he may or may not show you from Dr. Louis at Workland. So what we tell people we need to look at is our old resources that we used to use to teach, because some of them aren't okay, and some of them aren't even old. This one on the right is from 2018, Alberta Distance Learning. Really? So a kid up north had this test. Nice. Not okay. The one on the left is from last year in New Brunswick. Right? If you're not French, it says, I'm an Indian and I'll scalp you. We need to make sure that those resources don't get into our schools, right? So that's what I'm always telling people is look at your terminology, your authenticity, your accuracy, your imagery. Sometimes the words are good, the images are not. The diversity of it all, the Indigenous voice, and the lens. We want people to have a positive lens of Indigenous people, not a negative lens. That doesn't mean lie. The example I give teachers is a woman was a journalist, was taken up north. She went up north, and she was hosted by an Inuit community. She was feasted. She was taken on the land. She was shown the culture. She was treated like a queen. She was a guest of honor everywhere that she went. All those things. And she came home and wrote an article about poverty, addiction, and negative aspects, and the suicide crisis. Those are the 3 things she wrote her article about. Now, is she lying? No, there's poverty there, there's addiction there, there's a suicide crisis there. But when we talk about the lens, we talk about looking at, she should have written an article about the resilience, about the warmth, about the community, about how they were such good hosts, about the richness of the culture that she saw. All of those things is what she should have written about, that those things were there despite these other things. You acknowledge the other things. We don't want anyone to lie. You acknowledge them, but they shouldn't be central to your message or to your lesson. I'm not sure, Lance, if I have strayed here far from where you wanted me to be or not.
Oh goodness, no! You've given such a good insight as to how one learning community is building a very positive and holistic teaching strategy. So I want to open it up for people. I think a question has come up. Are you willing to share these slides? I think there's just is that something that you're okay with, Angela?
I think so. Yeah.
Just go through, because I think they give such a powerful snapshot of what is happening and ideas and possibilities for people. But I want to go back to this idea that you talked about of like smudging happening in every classroom, and it sounds like Calgary Catholic is embracing the knowledge and ways of doing things within the Indigenous community. So I need to ask, because I know it's on the minds of many people who are kind of just sort of on the outside looking in, and they're coming from a very a lens of really trying to be faithful to their Catholic ways of practicing and being faithful to that. How you said you sat down with the bishop and talked. How does the bishop kind of respond to smudging going on and you taking students to sweat lodges? What's the conversations that happen there?
Well, we didn't actually talk about us taking students to sweat lodges or us smudging in schools. It didn't come up and he didn't offer it. But what I can say is that everything that we said to him about, acknowledging the people of this territory, about honoring their opinions, about making right relations, making reparations, those types of things were very well received, and he had no qualms about them. When we asked to do our own land acknowledgement at our own meetings, he said, absolutely, you can do whatever acknowledgement you want at your other meetings. I just ask that you use the diocesan one in churches. And the reason that was given made a lot of sense. There are a lot of priests who are new Canadians. There are a lot of priests who don't know much about Indigenous populations. They don't know what they are allowed to say or not say. And so they have now this diocesan acknowledgement that they know they're allowed to use, they know they're allowed to share, and now they can use it. And it's accessible to someone who has a limited knowledge of the first people of this territory. And so, I mean, that like our elder in our department is Catholic as well. She's Catholic and she participates in her own spirituality. I think, did I pause my screen share or did you? Because I can show you a little bit of the PD slides that we do when we talk about indigenous spirituality and Catholicism, that context is key. So
Good.
this
No,
is us.
that would be really helpful to share. And then even as I'm doing that, for our other live guests, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to throw them out, either just opening your mic and or raising your hand or putting them in the chat box as well.
So I think you have to unpause my screen share.
Oh,
I didn't pause it. Did you?
I didn't pause. I don't think.
Okay, I'll reshare it again. No biggie.
Okay.
Biggie. And while I'm resharing it, Lance, if you can read anything that comes up in the chat box,
Sure.
That would be helpful because I can't. All right, share my screen. So last year, with the lady who replaced Lance, left me, we created this PD that we delivered to a few schools, and all the district asked is that when we present it with someone from the religious ed department, because we don't have the breadth and depth of knowledge that someone from the religious ed department might have. So we take this out, we use that prayer, we use the acknowledgement, we start in smudge, and then we talk about that Indigenous spirituality and Catholicism, its context. That's the key, and that it's not always been a good context. And so we use this quote from Pope John Paul, that the proper proclamation of the gospel in different cultures allows people to preserve their own cultural identity. This in no way creates division because the community of baptized is marked by a universality that can embrace every culture. And then to explain that, we talk about the first Council of Jerusalem, where all the heavies were there, like Peter, Paul, I think Bartholomew, I can't remember, but they're all there. And of course, they have to decide, do you have to give up your culture to be Catholic? And that would obviously, in their time and in their context, involve circumcision. And they decided that no, you did not have to give up your culture to be Catholic. So right from the very first Council of Jerusalem, that's what was decided. But we have historically strayed from that. And so we talk about different ways that that's happened in different places and in different cultures. St. Boniface, how he had, he sort of was the introducer of the Christmas tree, and he took it from a pagan something and made it into a Christian symbol. We talk about St. Thomas Aquinas, right? Faith and reason were not in conflict, and those conclusions are reached by way of philosophy, right? So, I mean, this is obviously like a 2-hour PD. We talk about the Huron Carol. We talk about then, so how it was done right for the first, 400 years or 450 years in a much more respectful way. And then sort of when when religion was brought to Turtle Island, how for some the context was ignored. We talk about how it was bad people, not a bad faith. And we go into that a little bit about the improper proclamation, and talk about that. Residential schools a little bit. We talk about, and then we talk about moving forward, right? So we do have and then we talk here about some of the work that's going on in Indigenous communication or in Indigenous communities. Like about how in Edmonton there's a parish, they now use cedar oil because Creator gifted us cedar oil on this territory, not olive oil, in order to do some of the blessings and stuff. And then we talk about the medicine wheel teachings a little bit, and then we talk about how it compares so closely to Luke 10:27, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your strength, and your mind. And those are the 4 pieces of the medicine wheel, right? Spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual. And then here's the video of olive oil versus cedar oil. This one that I don't have time to show you is about a parish in Edmonton where they have the crucifix, of course, which means all are welcome at the altar. And then around it is a medicine wheel that looks like it's made of cedar. Or no, sorry, sweetgrass. It's a braided sweetgrass medicine wheel around the crucifix. I can share this with you if you want.
I think these are really important examples and points of conversation. I'd love to have you back to unpack this 2-hour workshop. I think is really fascinating and so important, because I think a lot of people are very conscious and very anxious about offending anybody on either side. And we have this. I think what I'm hearing you saying is that there is this kind of false division between the traditions of the Indigenous communities and the incarnated Catholic practices that have emerged out of culture over the centuries, and were a way of helping people understand the Catholic faith. Just a final question, then we're going to close. And the one question one of our live guests just asked is, how do you suggest, or what do you suggest for new teachers as resources and lessons? You mentioned the TQS on one of your slides, and I think you have a whole learning booklet or manual to help teachers transition into that. Is that some, or I think, or maybe a learning resource? How to
we have an EPD site.
An EPD site, okay.
And it has like foundational knowledge was a section, teacher resources is a section, teacher professional development is a section, diverse learners is a section, and I can't remember what.
So any Catholic, Calgary Catholic employee would have access to that EPD site as soon as
and they have access to us too.
Great.
They can email us at any time and go like, I found this, can I use it? Or I have this idea, can I do that? Or can you come in and do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are, if you're willing and okay, Angela, we'll leave your contact information just in the, at the bottom of the video at the showpiece. So when we record this, we upload it, we'll include your contact there for people to follow up if they have further questions, because as you know, we have just such a great education program of pre-service teachers and even people who are thinking about what does it mean to be a Catholic educator, but this topic is really important to them, and they hopefully, after hearing you, are hearing that there's a lot of thought, intentional work that's going on at how learning how do we honor Indigenous ways of knowing and practice within our Catholic learning communities. And if they have more questions, and helps them feel encouraged about, hey, maybe Catholic education is a place that I feel really positive about contributing to. I'm sure you.
Yeah, I have to
you-
say, like, I started working for the board about 15 years ago before a lot of stuff came to the media and came to the attention of the general world about the Catholic Church and some of the struggles. And, as we're moving forward and trying to know better and do better, I've had obviously also my own struggles. But what I tell myself all the time is that we are valued as employees of Calgary Catholic. We are doing everything we can to move forward in a good way. And what I do in my own space, in my Catholic school board, is the work of, like, the good work. I hold safe spaces, I hold ethical spaces. I do everything I can in my place. And that's sort of how I think about it in my own head when I'm thinking about where I work and my career and my career choices and those types of things. Is that we're change makers, and we're doing good things to make the people we work with and the places we work feel valued and respected. And those types of people are needed everywhere.
Indeed, and we are so grateful that you are such a person who is there in the forefront making it all happen, and thank you for taking your time with us. You'll also be pleased to know that our next guest is Annette Brewstead from the Kainai Nation.
She's so wonderful.
Yeah, we're really excited to have her, and she, to your point, is really going to talk really positively about how through her experience as an educational leader, she has learned how to teach the whole student, body, spirit, and mind, and a lot of that has to do with her own Catholic faith and how she's been able to recognize the gifts that we bring to this. So
she just radiates kindness and warmth. You are so lucky.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. So, and you are welcome to join us, just like Lindsay, our previous guest, joined, our previous speaker rather, joined as a guest for you. So for the rest of us, do stay tuned for that. We're just really feeling so fortunate. All the presenters have provided something so rich, and we look forward to the next conversation. Until then, God bless.
I also, right on the bottom, I put my handle for Twitter. If you're interested in indigenizing your newsfeed, then follow me on Twitter, and that's a good place to start.
Great. Well, with that, many thanks to you, and we'll look forward to talking to you again.
Hand to heart, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for having me. Bye.